Unfortunately, a couple teams here recently have had injuries come about that will likely force them to become even more involved at the deadline than they intended to be. Therefore, in the spirit of all things trade-related, we'll simultaneously be addressing their newly found needs and who they could be targeting. In this video, we're going to go over a slew of players, their current situations, and where they could be dealt. And with that, here are 4 NHL players who could be moved by the deadline and where they may end up. Recently, Andy Strickland of Bally Sports Midwest indicated that Predators GM David Poile has begun to actively shop Filip Forsberg prior to the trade deadline. Forsberg, who is in a contract season, has definitely been boosting his value, as he's been producing at more than a point per game pace with the Preds, with 44 points in 39 games played. Impressively as well, the forward has had no problem with lighting the lamp, as 26 of his current points are goals. In result, on the surface, to the casual spectator, looking in on the situation, it may appear mind-boggling as to why and how Nashville hasn't re-upped the Swedish superstar. Unfortunately, as is usually the case, the obstacle preventing the new deal taking place is due to both parties, Poile and Forsberg's representation, have yet to agree on a prospective contract value. Despite his remarkable season, according to Elliotte Friedman, I'll link the article below, the amount in question will have to be lower than Roman Jossi's AAV, which is $9.059 million. Freeman went on to say that he wouldn't be surprised if Forsberg asked for higher. Even still, the NHL insider has also said that he believes the two parties have been negotiating and trying to find the right amounts. Despite this though, if Forsberg were to be moved before the deadline, it would be interesting to see where he would end up. A few teams we've heard in the mix are the Capitals, Islanders, and Rangers who, according to Athletic's Arthur Staple, have already inquired about the winger's services. So, just to make one thing clear on the Forsberg situation, the cost is obviously going to be very high to get him. He's also a pending UFA, therefore, logically, if he's dealt at the deadline, it's going to be probably to a cup contender. Even more specifically, a team that's close to a cup or bust type. The Capitals have been a rather sexy link to Forsberg considering they were the team that initially drafted him, but were forced to trade him away. And according to Friedman, the Capitals have been looking for help to bolster up their top 6. As I mentioned before, Washington has struggled immensely on the power play, which is currently 28th league-wide, and 2 of their top 5 scorers are defensemen as well, which is also telling that the Caps could benefit from Forsberg's services. The deal breaker here, however, could lie in what GM Brian McClellan is willing to give up for the Swede, as he may not be wanting to part with prospect Connor McMichael. Potentially trading his 2023 first-round pick could be an option, but then again, Washington is without theirs for this year already. But considering that the core is aging, and this could be their last kick at the can per se, the potential for Forsberg to make a return to DC, in my opinion, is still possible. A name that's been constantly in trade talks for quite some time now is Mark Giordano's, and for good reason. After being selected by Seattle, Giordano has been having a bounce-back season with the Kraken thus far. According to an article from The Athletic, he has been very sound defensively in a shutdown role on the Kraken's back end, while they have been .21 expected goals per 60 better with him on ice. Even at 38 years of age, the captain has proven that he can still handle top-pairing minutes and can be a reliable puck mover for contending teams. While he has been linked previously to the Bruins, Rangers, and his former team in Calgary, there's another that's recently emerged to possibly be in on the Giordano sweepstakes. Recently, the Toronto Maple Leafs were dealt a tough blow as Jake Muzzin was put on long-term injury reserve due to receiving another concussion, this time against Montreal. For Kyle Dubas, however, this has opened up over $5 million extra in cap space for him to work with, as he's likely going to be addressing multiple areas on his roster. And according to Elliotte Friedman, the Leafs could have close to $7 million to work with for the deadline. Knowing that Dubas has already looked into John Klingberg and Jacob Chychrun with no such luck, going for Giordano, who would help tighten things up defensively, could be another option to look into. With the most potent power play league-wide, I think it's fair to say that offense probably isn't the top priority for Dubas, at least at this point in time. Even though he does primarily play on the left side, inserting him into the lineup not only would help address some of Toronto's needs, but would also add in some more leadership and experience. That's always welcome for the playoffs. If Seattle can retain half of his $6.75 million cap cap hit and allow for his second-round pick and a prospect to be the return, then maybe, if he can't find a suitor with term and is potentially more desperate, then Dubas could take a swing at landing the Norris Trophy winner after all. Other destinations he could be dealt to include St. Louis and Florida. When it comes to all things crease related for the New Jersey Devils, you could say that they've had the worst luck. Not only did Jonathan Berger have to be put on the IR for the rest of the season, but Mackenzie Blackwood has also joined him due to a heel injury. While they have been playing a couple younger goalies and from the minors, one could say that for Tom Fitzgerald, the desperation to find a short-term fix in net has already set in. Even though the Edmonton Oilers have expressed interest already, could Fitzgerald also turn to Korpisalo for help between the pipes? Over in Columbus, things this season haven't exactly treated the netminder well. After playing in 18 games for CBJ thus far, Korpisalo currently is sporting a .887 save percentage and a 3.82 goals against average. Where Elvis Merzlikins was given a contract over him, however, he was averaging decent numbers during the 2019-2020 season. I think most of us can remember the stellar performance he put on during the 2020 postseason as well, and most of us can also agree that usually goalies are a lot like the weather and extremely hard to predict. They can play amazingly great in one season and then struggle immensely in the next, or vice versa. Freddie Anderson is a great example, as he really struggled in his last year for Toronto, but has been stellar for Carolina this campaign. Sometimes a mental strain of knowing you're not the guy moving forward can take its toll. But the bottom line here is, will the Devils be desperate enough to take a chance on Korpisalo if the cost isn't too high to acquire him? If the reinforcements from the minors or potentially the NCAA don't pan out, then it might be their next best option. Elliot Friedman recently stirred up the rumor mill, and no, we're not talking about JT Miller here. Actually, during his 32 Thoughts podcast, he indicated that Jeff Petry, who has been open with wanting out of Montreal, could be moved to Philadelphia. The case of moving to the city of brotherly love for Petry is due to the fact that Chuck Fletcher sees him as a potential piece to get his team over the hump, as the current outlook for the Flyers doesn't seem to be a full-on rebuild, but rather a retool. Friedman also went on to say that Rasmus Ristolainen is currently being shopped, therefore if a team was willing to take on the contract, it would make more sense for Petry to be dealt to the destination. Despite his lackluster performance for most of the season, since Marty St. Louis has assumed coaching duties, Petry has been producing at a higher rate, with 4 points in his last 5 games played. After this campaign, the defenseman will still have a few seasons left on his contract that has a $6.25 million AAV. He also has a 15-team no-trade list, but according to Friedman, he would prefer to play for an American team due to his family living in Michigan. If Philadelphia is serious about taking on Petry's contract, it would, in my opinion at least, be a smart move for Montreal to move it, considering he doesn't want to be there and the state of their franchise at this point in time, meaning that it would help clear the books for a potential free agent signing.